The red sand of Kythera Prime stretched endlessly under twin suns, broken only by jagged rock formations and the scattered remains of what had once been a thriving colony. Captain Elena Vasquez adjusted her environmental suit's cooling system as she led her reconnaissance team across the wasteland. The planet had been marked as a total loss after the Zephyrian invasion 3 months ago, but Command wanted one final sweep for salvageable technology before officially writing it off.
Heat signature ahead, reported Sergeant Marcus Chen, studying his scanner. About 2 clicks northeast. Could be machinery. Elena nodded, gesturing for the team to advance. The 12-person squad moved carefully through the alien landscape, their boots crunching on crystalline formations that had grown since the Zephyrian bioweapons had transformed the planet's ecosystem. Everything here wanted to kill you now, from the acidic air to the predatory plants that had sprouted in the wake of alien terraforming attempts. As they crested a low hill, Elena stopped abruptly. Below them, partially buried in a crater that still showed scorch marks from orbital bombardment, lay something that made her heart skip a beat. It was massive, easily the size of a small shuttle, with deep purple scales that shimmered in the harsh sunlight. But it wasn't a machine or a piece of debris. It was alive. "Is that what I think it is?" whispered Private Sarah Kim, her voice tight with fear. Elena had seen the classified briefings. Every human soldier in this sector had been shown the footage, the warnings, the desperate reports from colonies that had faced them. It was a Vorthack, a creature so feared that even the Zephyrians used them as shock troops. Standing over 4 meters tall and twice as long, with 6 powerful legs ending in razor-sharp claws, the Vorthack were living weapons. Their armored hides could deflect most energy weapons, their speed could match a hoverbike, and their intelligence was rumored to be on par with higher mammals. They were apex predators engineered for war. But this one wasn't moving. "Biosigns are weak but present," reported Corporal David Torres, the team's medic, as he adjusted his scanner's sensitivity. "Whatever it is, it's dying." Elena studied the creature through her rifle's scope. Its breathing was labored, each rise and fall of its massive chest accompanied by a whistling sound that spoke of internal injuries. One of its 6 legs was bent at an impossible angle, clearly broken. Dark fluid, probably blood, had pooled around its body and dried in the alien sun. Most telling of all, metal restraints still circled its legs and neck, connected to a control collar that sparked occasionally with failing electronics. "It's been abandoned," she realized aloud. "The Zephyrians left it here to die." "Good," muttered Sergeant Chen. "These things have killed thousands of our people. Let it rot." But Elena couldn't look away. She had grown up on a farm on New Montana, where her family raised livestock. She recognized suffering when she saw it, regardless of species. The Vorthack's large, amber eyes were open, tracking their movement with an intelligence that was undeniably aware. It knew they were there. It knew it was dying. And, somehow, she could see resignation in those alien features. "Ma'am," Private Kim said nervously, "we should move on. These things are dangerous even when they're healthy." "A wounded predator is 10 times worse." Elena lowered her rifle. "Torres, how close would you need to get for a proper scan?" The medic looked at her as if she'd suggested jumping off a cliff. "Captain, you can't be serious. That's a Vorthack. They're engineered to hate us." "They're engineered to obey the Zephyrians," Elena corrected. "Look at it, Torres. Really look. When was the last time you saw a wild animal with restraints?" The team exchanged uneasy glances. Elena was right, and they all knew it. The Vorthack wasn't a monster that had chosen to attack human colonies. It was a slave, bred and trained and controlled by technology they didn't understand. And now it had been discarded like a broken tool. 15 meters, Torres said reluctantly. "But, Captain, even dying, that thing could take out half our team before we could stop it." Elena nodded thoughtfully. She activated her comm unit and contacted their ship in orbit. "Phoenix Actual, this is Ground Team 7. Requesting priority consultation with Xenobiology." The response came quickly. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, the expedition's senior xenobiologist, had been monitoring their mission feed. Her voice crackled through the calm with barely contained excitement. "Captain, please tell me you're not planning to approach that creature." "I need information, Doctor. Hypothetically, if we were to attempt medical intervention on a Vorthack, what would be our chances of success?" A long pause.
Then, reluctantly, the Vorthack physiology is remarkably similar to Earth's large predatory mammals, but with redundant organ systems and enhanced healing capabilities. If the internal injuries aren't too severe, and if we could adapt our medical technology to their biochemistry, it's theoretically possible. But, Captain, the psychological conditioning these creatures undergo is extreme. Even if you saved its life, it would likely try to kill you the moment it recovered.
Elena watched the creature's labored breathing. What about the control collar? Could we remove it? The collars are designed to be permanent. Attempting removal usually triggers a lethal shock.
However, if the collar's power source is failing, which seems likely given the electromagnetic readings I'm seeing through your scanner data, there might be a window of opportunity. But, the risks.
Understood, Doctor. Ground Team 7 out. Elena turned to her squad.
12 faces looked back at her through their helmet visors, ranging from confused to concerned to outright hostile. She knew what they were thinking. Why risk their lives for an enemy war beast? Why show mercy to something that had been created to destroy humanity? But, Elena had learned long ago that the measure of a civilization wasn't how it treated its friends, but how it treated its enemies. And, more than that, she was looking at a living being that had never chosen its fate, never chosen to be a weapon, never chosen to kill. It had been made into what it was by the same species that had tried to wipe out humanity. "Here's what we're going to do," she said, her voice carrying the authority of command.
"We're going to help it."
The protests came immediately, as she'd expected. Chen stepped forward, his rifle still trained on the creature.
"Captain, with all due respect, this is insane. That thing is a killing machine. It's probably responsible for the deaths of hundreds of our people."
"It's responsible for nothing," Elena replied firmly. "It's a victim, just like every human colony the Zephyrians have attacked. The only difference is that this victim has claws and armor instead of families and homes. But the danger, Private Kim began, is manageable if we're careful."
Elena was already formulating a plan.
"Torres, what do you need to perform emergency field surgery on something that size?"
The medic shook his head.
"Captain, even if I had proper equipment, which I don't, the anesthesia alone would be a problem.
We don't know how Vorthack physiology responds to human sedatives. Too little and it wakes up during surgery. Too much and we kill it."
"Then, we don't use anesthesia," Elena said simply. "We use the fact that it's already unconscious from its injuries." Dr. Harper's voice crackled through the comm again.
"Captain, I've been analyzing the creature's bio readings through your team's scanner network.
The Vorthack appears to be suffering from internal bleeding, likely from the orbital bombardment, and its left rear leg is badly fractured.
However, its vital signs suggest it's entered a natural healing trance, similar to hibernation. This might actually work in your favor." Elena felt a surge of hope. "Explain." "During healing trance, a Vorthack's pain response is dramatically reduced, and its healing factor is enhanced.
If you can stop the internal bleeding and set the bone properly, its own physiology should handle the rest. But, Captain, you need to understand that once it heals, you'll be dealing with a fully functional war beast with no loyalty to humanity." "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it," Elena said. She turned to her team.
"Chen, Kim, establish a perimeter. If anything approaches, I want to know about it.
Torres, you're with me. Everyone else, prepare for emergency extraction if this goes south." The squad moved into position with the efficient precision of veteran soldiers. Elena and Torres approached the Vorthack slowly, weapons ready but not aimed directly at the creature.
Up close, its size was even more intimidating.
The creature's head alone was larger than Elena's entire torso, with an elongated snout filled with teeth the size of combat knives. Its scales weren't just purple, she realized, but had an iridescent quality that shifted color as they moved, probably some kind of natural camouflage system. "Biosigns are stable," Torres reported, his medical scanner humming as it analyzed the alien physiology.
"You're right about the healing trance.
Its heart rate is down to maybe 20% of normal, and brain activity is minimal. But, Captain, look at this collar." The control device was a work of art in its own way, a seamless blend of technology and biotechnology that had grown partially into the creature's flesh. Wires and organic conduits snaked under the scales, connecting to neural pathways and major organs. But the main control unit was clearly failing.
Cracks spiderwebbed across its surface, and the rhythmic pulsing of its power core was becoming increasingly erratic. Can we remove it safely? Elena asked. Torres studied his readings carefully. Maybe. The power core is definitely dying, which should reduce the shock risk. But some of these connections have been in place for so long they become integrated with its nervous system. Removing them could cause paralysis or death. Elena knelt beside the creature's massive head, studying the control collar more closely. As she watched, one of the creature's amber eyes opened slightly, tracking her movement. There was no aggression in that gaze, no predatory calculation. Just awareness. And pain. We have to try, she said quietly. Torres, prep your surgical kit. We're going to remove this thing and patch up whatever we can. For the next 3 hours, Elena and Torres worked with painstaking care. The surgical laser was designed for human physiology, but Torres had managed to recalibrate it for the Vorthax's tougher hide. Slowly, carefully, they disconnected the organic interfaces, cauterized bleeding vessels, and began the delicate work of extracting the control collar without destroying the creature's nervous system. The collar's power finally died completely just as they finished the most dangerous part of the extraction. Elena watched the last lights fade from the device and felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Whatever this creature had been forced to do under Zephyrian control, it would never have to do again. Internal bleeding is stopped, Torres reported. The bone fracture is going to be tricky, but I think I can manage a field splint that will hold until its natural healing takes over. Captain, I have to admit, this is probably the most insane thing I've ever done, but it's working. Elena smiled behind her helmet visor. Sometimes the right thing to do is also the crazy thing to do. As Torres worked on the fractured leg, Elena noticed something that made her heart race. The creature's breathing was becoming stronger, more regular. Its color was shifting from the dull purple of injury to a more vibrant shade that suggested returning health. Most importantly, both amber eyes were now open and following their movements with clear intelligence. It's waking up, she said softly. Torres looked up from his work. Healing trance is ending. Captain, we need to back away. Now. But Elena found herself reluctant to move. The Vorthax's gaze had fixed on her, and she could swear she saw something like recognition? Gratitude? It was impossible to read emotion in such an alien face, but there was definitely intelligence there, and that intelligence was focused entirely on her. Slowly, carefully, the creature lifted its massive head. Elena's hand went instinctively to her sidearm, but she didn't draw it. The Vorthax could have snapped her in half without effort, collar or no collar. If it wanted to attack, she was already dead. Instead, the creature did something completely unexpected. It lowered its head until its snout was almost touching the ground in front of Elena, and made a sound unlike anything she'd ever heard from a predator. It was low and rumbling, almost like a purr, but with harmonic overtones that suggested complex vocal cords. Is it thanking us? Torres asked in amazement. Elena reached out slowly, her gloved hand hovering inches from the creature's scaled snout. The Vorthax remained perfectly still, watching her with those intelligent amber eyes. Finally, she made contact, her palm resting against scales that were surprisingly warm. The reaction was immediate. The creature's purring sound increased in volume and complexity, becoming almost musical. Its eyes closed partially, and Elena could swear she felt it leaning slightly into her touch. This changes everything, she whispered. Over the calm, Dr. Harper's excited voice crackled through, Captain, are you seeing this? The bio readings are incredible. The creature is exhibiting behavior I've never seen documented in any Vorthax encounter. It's showing clear signs of attachment and trust. You may have just achieved the first successful diplomatic contact with a Vorthax in human history. Elena continued to stroke the creature's snout, marveling at the trust it was showing. This wasn't a mindless war beast. This was an intelligent being that understood they had saved its life, and was expressing gratitude in the only way it knew how. What happens now? Torres asked. We can't exactly take it back to the ship. Elena considered the question carefully. The Vorthax was still severely injured, despite their medical intervention. It would need time to heal, time they couldn't provide on this hostile planet. But taking it aboard a human vessel would be impossible to explain to command, and the risk to the crew would be enormous. Dr. Harper, she said into her calm, how long would full recovery take for a Vorthack with these injuries? Given their accelerated healing, probably 2 to 3 weeks for basic mobility. Full combat effectiveness would take longer, maybe 6 weeks.
But, Captain, you can't be thinking of staying here to monitor its recovery.
Elena looked around at the desolate landscape of Kythera Prime. The planet was officially a write-off, scheduled for abandonment. No other human forces would be coming here.
It would be the perfect place for a recovering Vorthack to remain hidden.
But leaving it alone wasn't an option either.
The planet was still dangerous, and the creature would be vulnerable during its recovery. More than that, Elena realized she had a unique opportunity here. If they could prove that Vorthacks were capable of independence, of choosing their own loyalty rather than being enslaved by control collars, it could change the entire war effort.
Torres, she said suddenly. How would you feel about an extended camping trip? Torres looked at Elena as if she'd suggested they vacation in the heart of a star. Captain, you want to stay here? On a planet that's been marked for permanent quarantine? With a creature that could decide we're lunch the moment it feels better?
Elena understood his concerns, but her mind was already working through the possibilities.
Think about it, Torres. This is the first time in human history that we've encountered a Vorthack without Zephyrian control.
We have a chance to learn about them, to understand them.
Maybe even to communicate with them properly.
She gestured toward the creature, which was still watching them with those intelligent amber eyes.
Look at how it's behaving. No aggression, no predatory posturing. It knows we helped it.
That suggests a level of emotional intelligence the xenobiology reports never mentioned. Dr. Harper's voice came through the comm again, and Elena could hear the excitement building in her tone.
Captain, from a scientific standpoint, this is an unprecedented opportunity. But the risks are enormous. You'd be completely isolated on a hostile planet with a creature we know almost nothing about. If something goes wrong, then we improvise, Elena said firmly.
She turned to Torres.
I'm not ordering you to stay.
This is volunteer only.
But I think this could be the key to understanding our enemy's greatest weapon. Torres was quiet for a long moment, studying the Vorthack.
The creature had managed to shift its position slightly, turning more toward them. Its movements were careful and deliberate, clearly designed not to appear threatening. One of its smaller foreclaws was extended toward Elena, not in an aggressive gesture, but almost as if it was trying to reciprocate the gentle contact she had initiated.
You know what the really crazy part is? Torres said finally. I think you're right. This thing is trying to communicate with us. Look at its body language.
It's deliberately making itself appear smaller, less threatening. That's learned behavior, not instinct.
Elena nodded.
She had noticed the same thing. The Vorthack was consciously modulating its behavior to put them at ease, which suggested not only intelligence but empathy. It understood that humans might be frightened of it and was trying to minimize that fear. Phoenix Actual, Elena said into her calm, I need to speak with command. The response came quickly. Colonel Martinez, the expedition commander, sounded less than pleased when he came on the channel.
Captain Vasquez, I've been monitoring your situation. Please tell me you're not about to request permission for what I think you're about to request. Sir, we have an unprecedented opportunity here.
This Vorthack has been freed from Zephyrian control and is showing clear signs of intelligence and peaceful intent. If we could establish proper communication, learn about their capabilities and psychology when they're not being controlled. Captain, you're talking about staying on a quarantine planet with a creature that has been responsible for the deaths of thousands of our people.
The answer is no. Elena had expected this response, but she was prepared for it.
Colonel, with respect, this creature hasn't killed anyone. The Zephyrians used it as a weapon, but it never chose to be one. We have evidence that Vorthacks are capable of independent thought and emotional response. This could change everything about how we approach this war.
A long pause. Then, explain. Elena chose her words carefully.
Sir, what if the Zephyrians' greatest weapon could become our greatest ally? What if these creatures aren't naturally aggressive, but are being forced to fight against their nature? We could be looking at a way to turn their own bioweapons against them.
She could practically hear Colonel Martinez thinking. The strategic implications were staggering.
If Vortex could be freed from Zephyrian control and convinced to fight alongside humans instead of against them, it would shift the balance of the entire war.
How long would you need? He asked finally. 3 weeks minimum for basic communication protocols.
6 weeks if we want to attempt full language exchange and trust building.
Absolutely not.
I won't leave 2 of my people stranded on a dead planet for 6 weeks with a creature that could kill them at any moment.
Elena looked at the Vortex again.
The creature was still watching them, and she could swear she saw patience in its expression. It knew they were discussing its fate, and it was waiting to see what they would decide. What if it wasn't just 2 people, she asked suddenly. What if we established a proper research station?
Small team, defensive perimeter, regular check-ins with the fleet?
Dr. Harper's voice cut in eagerly. Colonel, I volunteer for the xenobiology component.
This is the discovery of a lifetime. We can't pass up this opportunity.
And I volunteer for engineering support, came another voice.
Lieutenant James Park, the expedition's senior technical officer, was clearly monitoring the conversation.
If we're going to attempt communication with an alien species, we'll need proper equipment.
Translation computers, environmental monitoring, defensive systems.
Elena felt a surge of gratitude toward her colleagues. They understood the importance of what they were seeing, even if command was hesitant.
Colonel Martinez was quiet for several minutes.
Finally, he spoke again. Captain, you have 48 hours to establish initial contact protocols and prove that this creature isn't a threat.
If you can demonstrate that it's truly peaceful and intelligent, I'll consider a longer-term research mission.
But, the moment it shows any signs of aggression, you extract immediately.
Is that understood?
Understood, sir.
Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Captain.
You may have just volunteered for the most dangerous assignment in the fleet.
As the comm channel closed, Elena turned back to the Vortex.
The creature had been listening to the entire conversation, its head tilted slightly as if trying to understand the sounds they were making. When it caught Elena's attention, it made that same musical purring sound from before.
All right, she said to Torres. 48 hours to prove we can communicate with an alien war beast. Any ideas? Torres was already unpacking his medical kit again. First things first, let's make sure our patient is stable. Then, we can worry about language lessons. As Torres continued his medical assessment, Elena found herself studying the Vortex behavior more carefully.
The creature was clearly intelligent, but its intelligence seemed to operate on a different level than human cognition. Its movements were fluid and purposeful, suggesting excellent spatial reasoning. Its attention to their conversations indicated auditory processing capabilities. Most interestingly, it seemed to understand that different sounds had different meanings, even if it couldn't interpret the meanings themselves. Try saying something to it, she suggested to Torres.
Torres looked up from his scanner. Like what? Hello, how are you feeling today? To Elena's amazement, the Vortex head turned immediately toward Torres when he spoke.
Not just a general awareness of sound, but a specific focus on the human who had made the vocalization. When Torres finished speaking, the creature made a different sound than before, still musical but with a distinctly different tonal pattern.
It's trying to respond, Elena breathed. Torres, say something else. My name is Torres. I'm a medic.
He felt foolish talking to the alien creature, but the response was immediate and unmistakable. The Vortex made another sound, this one with 3 distinct tonal patterns. Then, it looked directly at Elena. I think it's asking for your name, Torres said in wonder. The first pattern when I said Torres, the second when I said medic, and now it's looking at you. Elena cleared her throat, feeling equally foolish.
My name is Elena. I'm the captain.
The creature's response was immediate and complex. It repeated what sounded like its attempt at Elena, though the alien vocal cords made it sound more like a musical chord than a word. Then, it made the same sound it had made when Torres identified himself as a medic. Finally, it produced a completely new sound, looking directly at Elena.
It's learning, Elena said, her excitement growing.
It understands that we have individual identities and roles. And it's trying to use our linguistic patterns to communicate with us.
Over the next several hours, they established basic communication protocols. The Vorthack demonstrated an remarkable ability to learn and remember human vocal patterns, though its reproduction of them was limited by its very different vocal anatomy.
More importantly, it began to produce its own distinct sounds for different concepts, creating what amounted to a rudimentary shared vocabulary. By nightfall, they had established words for basic concepts like yes, no, food, water, and pain. The creature had even managed to produce something that sounded vaguely like their names, though with the distinctive harmonic quality of its natural vocalizations. As the twin sun set and Kythera Prime's bitter night began to fall, Elena faced a new challenge.
The temperature would drop below freezing within hours, and their environmental suits were designed for daily operations, not overnight survival.
The Vorthack, despite its injuries, would probably be fine thanks to its thick scales and internal heating mechanisms.
But 2 humans in environmental suits would be in serious trouble.
The creature seemed to understand their dilemma. As Elena and Torres began setting up their emergency shelter, a process that involved inflating a small habitat dome and activating its heating elements, the Vorthack watched with obvious interest. When they began shivering despite their suit's best efforts, it made a sound they had learned to interpret as concern.
Then, it did something extraordinary.
Despite its injuries, the massive creature began moving, carefully positioning itself between their shelter and the prevailing wind. Its large body acted as a windbreak, and Elena realized that the creature was deliberately using its own body heat to warm the area around their shelter.
"It's protecting us," Torres said in amazement.
"It understands that we're vulnerable to the cold, and it's using its own body to shield us."
Elena felt a profound sense of connection with the alien creature. This wasn't just intelligence at work, or even gratitude for their medical assistance.
This was active care for their well-being, a deliberate choice to put their comfort ahead of its own. Through their shared vocabulary, she tried to express gratitude. "Thank you," she said, using the combination of sounds they had established for positive acknowledgement. The Vorthack's response was a low, rumbling sound that seemed to convey satisfaction and contentment. Then, it carefully adjusted its position to provide even better protection from the wind while being careful not to put pressure on its healing leg. That night, as Elena lay in the small shelter listening to the alien creature's steady breathing outside, she realized that everything humanity thought they knew about the Vorthax was wrong.
These weren't mindless killing machines.
They were intelligent, empathetic beings who had been enslaved and forced to act against their nature. "Torres," she whispered.
"Are you awake?"
"Hard to sleep when you're making history," he replied softly.
"Elena, what we're doing here, this is going to change everything." "I know. The question is, will Command give us enough time to prove it?"
Outside, the Vorthack made a soft sound, almost like a lullaby. Elena found herself drifting off to sleep to the strange, musical breathing of an alien creature that had chosen to protect them through the night. When she woke the next morning, she found that the creature had remained in position all night, even though shifting its weight would have relieved pressure on its injured leg. It had prioritized their safety and comfort over its own physical relief. "Good morning," she said softly, and was rewarded with what had become the Vorthack's version of a greeting, a rising tonal pattern that somehow conveyed warmth and recognition. Dr. Harper's voice came through the calm as Elena was checking her equipment.
"Captain, I've been analyzing the recordings from yesterday.
The linguistic patterns you've established are remarkable. The creature isn't just mimicking sounds, it's understanding conceptual relationships and creating its own linguistic structures. This level of cognitive flexibility suggests intelligence comparable to higher primates, possibly even approaching human levels in some areas."
Elena smiled.
"Doctor, I think you're underestimating our friend here. Based on what we've observed, I'd say its intelligence is fully comparable to human levels, just organized differently."
That's incredible. Captain, you need to understand what this means.
If Vorthax are truly this intelligent, then what the Zephyrians have done to them is nothing short of a crime against sentient life. They've essentially enslaved an entire species and forced them to commit acts of war against their will. Elena looked at the creature, which was watching her with those intelligent amber eyes.
"I know, Doctor. And we're going to make sure the galaxy knows it too."
But, first, she had to prove to Command that this creature could be trusted. She had less than 24 hours left in her deadline, and she needed to demonstrate not just communication, but active cooperation and peaceful intent. "All right," she said to the Vorthack, using their established sounds for attention and readiness.
"Time to show the universe what you're really made of."
The second day brought new challenges and unexpected revelations. Elena woke to find the Vorthack carefully examining their equipment, not with predatory interest, but with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. When it noticed her watching, it made the greeting sound they had established and, then, gestured with one of its smaller foreclaws toward Torres's medical scanner. It wants to understand our technology, Elena realized. She approached slowly, holding the scanner where the creature could see it clearly. This measures biological functions, she explained, using their limited shared vocabulary for body and information. The Vorthack's response was immediate and complex. It produced a series of sounds they hadn't heard before, accompanied by gestures toward its own body, then toward Elena and Torres. The meaning was unmistakable. It was trying to explain something about biological functions. Torres, wake up. I think our friend is trying to teach us something. As Torres emerged from the shelter, the Vorthack began what could only be described as a medical demonstration. Using careful movements and deliberate vocalizations, it showed them how to identify different pressure points on its body, how to read the subtle color changes in its scales that indicated health status, and how to recognize the warning signs of various physiological states. Incredible, Torres breathed. It's giving us a crash course in Vorthack physiology. Look at this. He adjusted his scanner based on the creature's guidance and immediately got more accurate readings. It knew our equipment wasn't calibrated properly for its biology, so it's teaching us how to fix it. But the demonstration went further than simple medical knowledge. The Vorthack began showing them how it perceived the environment differently than they did. Its head movements and eye positioning revealed that it could see heat signatures, detect electrical fields, and sense vibrations through the ground that were completely invisible to human senses. Elena, Torres said excitedly, it's not just intelligent. It's trying to share its capabilities with us. It understands that we're limited by our human senses, and it's trying to compensate by acting as our early warning system. To prove the point, the creature suddenly stiffened, its head turning toward a distant ridge. It made a sharp warning sound and gestured urgently for them to take cover behind a nearby rock formation. Within minutes, Elena's scanner picked up movement on the horizon, a pack of the aggressive plant predators that had evolved in the wake of the Zephyrian bioweapons. The Vorthack had detected them long before human sensors could register their presence, and it had immediately moved to protect the humans from potential danger. This changes the tactical situation completely, Elena said into her calm, reporting to Dr. Harper. We're not just looking at an intelligent species. We're looking at a species with sensory capabilities that could be invaluable to human survival in hostile environments. Dr. Harper's response was immediate and excited. Captain, I need to patch you through to Colonel Martinez immediately. The strategic implications of what you're describing are staggering. When the colonel came on the line, Elena could hear the tension in his voice. Captain, I've been following your reports. Are you telling me that this creature is actively protecting you and sharing tactical information? More than that, sir. It's demonstrating problem-solving skills, teaching capabilities, and what appears to be a natural instinct to form protective relationships. Colonel, I don't think the Zephyrians have been using these creatures as simple weapons. I think they've been using them as intelligent partners, forced into service through the control collars. A long pause. Then, Captain, I'm going to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. Do you believe this creature would fight alongside humans against the Zephyrians if given the choice? Elena looked at the Vorthack, which was still maintaining its protective position between them and the distant predators. The creature had every reason to hate humans, considering how many of its kind they had been forced to kill in previous battles. But, instead of seeking revenge, it had chosen to protect and teach. Yes, sir. I believe it would. Then, you have your extended mission, Captain. But, we're doing this properly. I'm sending down a full research team with defensive capabilities and proper equipment. Dr. Harper, Lieutenant Park, and a security detail will be planetside within 12 hours. You've got 6 weeks to prove that Vorthacks can be allies instead of enemies. Elena felt a surge of excitement and relief. Thank you, Colonel. You won't regret this decision. I hope not, Captain. Because if you're wrong about this creature's intentions, you'll be putting a lot of lives at risk. As the comm channel closed, Elena turned to share the good news with the Vorthack. But the creature was already looking at her with what appeared to be understanding in its amber eyes. It had been listening to the conversation, and somehow it seemed to grasp that important decisions were being made. We're staying, she told it, using their established sounds for US, here, and time extension.
More humans are coming to meet you. The Vorthack's response was complex and multi-layered.
It made sounds indicating understanding, followed by what they had learned was its expression of approval, and, then, a new sound entirely, one that seemed to carry both hope and wariness. It's pleased about the extended contact, but concerned about more humans, Torres interpreted.
Smart creature. It knows that not all humans are going to be as accepting as we are. Elena nodded.
The Vorthack was right to be cautious. When the research team arrived, there would inevitably be some who saw it as a threat rather than an opportunity. Building trust with a full team would be much more challenging than the personal connection she and Torres had established. Over the next 12 hours, as they waited for the research team to arrive, Elena worked with the Vorthack to establish more complex communication protocols. The creature demonstrated an impressive ability 3 weeks into the research mission. Everything changed with a single emergency transmission. Phoenix Actual to ground team, Colonel Martinez's voice crackled through the calm with unusual urgency.
We're detecting Zephyrian ships entering the system. ETA to Kythera Prime is approximately 6 hours. You need to extract immediately.
Elena felt her heart sink. They had made incredible progress with Kirith, establishing complex communication protocols and learning more about Vorthack society than humanity had discovered in years of warfare. But 6 weeks had become 3, and now even that was being cut short. Colonel, we're not ready for extraction, she replied.
We're in the middle of crucial research, and Kirith isn't mobile enough for emergency transport.
Captain, this is not a discussion.
The Zephyrians are coming in force, probably to reclaim their bioweapon assets on the planet.
I won't risk an entire research team for one creature. Elena looked at Kirith, who had been following the conversation with obvious concern. The creature had learned enough human vocal patterns to recognize stress and urgency in their voices, even without understanding specific words. Dr. Harper stepped forward. Colonel, you need to understand what we're dealing with here.
Kirith isn't just an individual success story. It's demonstrated the ability to identify other Vorthack control frequencies and has been teaching us how to safely remove the neural control interfaces.
If we extract now, we lose the opportunity to free potentially hundreds of other enslaved creatures.
Lieutenant Park added his support.
Sir, the technological implications alone justify the risk.
Kirith has helped us understand Zephyrian biotechnology in ways that could revolutionize our defensive capabilities. We can't abandon this research now.
Through their improved translation system, Elena explained the situation to Kirith. The creature's response was immediate and complex, a series of sounds that their computer interpreted as urgency, determination, and what could only be described as righteous anger. It wants to face the Zephyrians, Elena said in amazement.
Kirith is asking to fight alongside us.
Colonel Martinez's voice came back sharp and disbelieving.
Captain, are you seriously suggesting we use an enemy bioweapon in combat against its former masters? Not an enemy bioweapon, sir.
An ally who has personal reasons for wanting revenge against the species that enslaved it and its people.
Elena turned to the research team. How long would we need to implement Kirith's collar removal techniques on other Vorthacks?
Dr. Harper consulted her notes quickly. If we could identify and isolate the creatures, maybe 2 hours per individual. But, Captain, we don't even know if there are other Vorthacks on this planet. Kirith made a series of urgent sounds, gesturing toward the horizon. Through their translation system, its meaning became clear. There were indeed other Vorthacks on Kythera Prime, still under Zephyrian control, and they would arrive with the invasion force as shock troops. Colonel, Elena said into her calm, we have an opportunity here that may never come again. Kirith can identify and help us free other members of its species. Instead of facing Zephyrian bioweapons in combat, we could turn those weapons into allies.
A long pause.
Then, Captain, you're asking me to risk the lives of your entire team on the assumption that you can perform battlefield surgery on hostile alien creatures while under enemy fire.
I'm asking you to trust that what we've learned here is worth the risk.
Sir, if we can prove that Vorthacks will fight alongside humans when given the choice, it changes the entire strategic balance of this war.
Elena could practically hear Colonel Martinez weighing the possibilities. Finally, you have until the Zephyrian fleet arrives.
If you can free even one additional Vorthack and demonstrate that it will fight alongside you, I'll consider this mission a success. But, the moment things go sideways, you extract immediately.
Understood, sir. As the comm channel closed, Elena turned to her team. All right, people. We have 6 hours to achieve something that's never been done before. Let's get to work.
The next few hours were a blur of preparation and planning. Lieutenant Park worked frantically to adapt their medical equipment for field use, while Dr. Harper compiled everything they had learned about Vorthack physiology and collar removal techniques. The security team, led by Sergeant Rodriguez, established defensive positions around their base camp. Through it all, Kareth was a constant source of information and assistance. Using the translation computer, it provided detailed intelligence about Zephyrian tactics, the behavioral patterns of controlled Vorthacks, and the best strategies for approaching creatures that were still under neural domination. The key is to disable the collar's control functions without triggering its lethal failsafes, Kareth explained through the computer's synthesized voice. The creatures will fight us initially, but, once the collars are removed, they will understand what has happened.
Elena studied the tactical situation. How many Vorthacks are we likely to face?
The Zephyrians typically deploy 3 to 5 per assault force, Kareth responded. They will be the first wave, designed to clear resistance before the main forces land. Dr. Harper looked up from her medical preparations.
Captain, even if we successfully free 1 or 2 Vorthacks, how do we know they'll trust us?
Kareth had time to recover and form relationships with us. These creatures will be in the middle of combat conditioning. Kareth produced a sound that the translator rendered as confidence.
They will know.
When the false commands end, they will remember who they truly are.
The hate they feel will not be for you. As the Zephyrian ships entered the planet's atmosphere, Elena felt a mixture of fear and anticipation.
Everything they had worked for, everything they had learned, was about to be put to the ultimate test. The first sign of the invasion was a distant rumble as Zephyrian dropships descended toward their location.
Elena's scanner showed 5 large biosignatures separating from the main group and approaching at high speed. 5 Vorthacks, just as Kareth predicted, she reported. ETA 3 minutes.
Kareth took position at the front of their defensive perimeter, its body language suddenly different. Elena could see the warrior that the Zephyrians had tried to create, but tempered by the intelligence and empathy they had nurtured over the past weeks.
Remember, Elena said to her team, we're not trying to kill them. We're trying to save them.
The first Vorthack crested the ridge at full charge, its armored hide gleaming in the alien sunlight. Elena's heart sank as she saw the familiar control collar around its neck, the neural interface wires snaking under its scales like parasites. But, instead of attacking immediately, the creature stopped, confused. Its amber eyes fixed on Kareth, and Elena could see recognition and confusion warring in its expression. The control collar was ordering it to attack, but its instincts were telling it that Kareth was family, not enemy. Kareth called out in the complex harmonic language of its species, sounds that no human throat could reproduce. The approaching Vorthack responded, and, even through the electronic distortion of its collar, Elena could hear distress and plea for help. It's fighting the conditioning, Dr. Harper breathed. The collar is forcing aggressive behavior, but seeing Kareth free is causing cognitive dissonance.
Elena made a decision that would either save lives or doom them all.
Stand down, she ordered her security team. Do not fire unless I give direct orders. She stepped forward, slowly and deliberately, her hands visible and empty.
Kareth, can you keep it calm while Torres removes the collar?
Kareth continued its musical conversation with the controlled creature, and Elena could see the captured Vorthack's distress increasing. It wanted to respond to its kinsman, but the collar was overriding its natural behaviors. Torres approached carefully with the modified medical laser they had used on Kareth's collar. This is insane, he muttered, but his hands were steady as he began the delicate work of disconnecting the neural interfaces. The other 4 Vorthacks had arrived and taken positions around their companion, but they too seemed confused by Kareth's presence. Their collars were forcing them to maintain aggressive stances, but Elena could see the internal struggle in their movements. Got it, Torres said as the first collar powered down and fell away. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The freed Vorthack staggered as if waking from a nightmare, its eyes clearing as its natural personality reasserted itself. When it looked at the humans again, there was no aggression in its gaze, only confusion and gradual understanding. Kirith approached its freed kinsman carefully, and the two creatures engaged in a complex interaction of sounds and gestures that clearly constituted an emotional reunion.
Then, working together, they approached the next controlled vortex. What Elena witnessed next was unlike anything in human military experience.
The two free vortex used their own vocalizations and pheromone signatures to calm their controlled companions, reducing the stress that made collar removal dangerous. Working as a team, Torres and Dr. Harper were able to free the remaining three creatures in less than an hour. As the last collar fell away, Elena found herself facing 5 free vortex, each one looking at the humans with expressions that combined gratitude, confusion, and dawning purpose. Kirith served as translator, explaining what had happened and what the humans had done for them. The newly freed creatures' response was unanimous and immediate. They positioned themselves in a defensive formation around the human research team, their body language making their intentions clear. They were ready to fight alongside their liberators against their former captors. Colonel, Elena said into her calm, mission accomplished.
We now have 6 vortex allies ready to engage Zephyrian forces.
The response was immediate and incredulous.
Captain, did you say 6 allied vortex? Confirmed, sir. And, Colonel?
They're asking for the chance to free others of their kind.
This is just the beginning.
The Zephyrian main assault began at dawn, but it wasn't the overwhelming victory they had expected. Elena watched through her scope as dropships disgorged hundreds of enemy soldiers, their insectoid forms moving with mechanical precision across the red desert. But something was wrong with their formation. Where there should have been vortex shock troops leading the charge, there was empty space. They're wondering where their bioweapons are, Elena said with grim satisfaction. Kirith and the 5 newly freed vortex had positioned themselves strategically around the human research base, using their superior senses to track enemy movements. Through the translation computer, they were providing real-time intelligence that no human sensor system could match. 12 scout units approaching from the North Canyon, Kirith reported. Heavy weapons team establishing position on the eastern ridge.
Main force is holding back, waiting for advance units to report success. Elena smiled. They're going to be waiting a long time. The first Zephyrian scouts to reach their perimeter got the shock of their lives. Instead of overwhelming undefended humans, they found themselves facing their own bioweapons in open rebellion.
The psychological impact was devastating. Zephyrian tactics relied heavily on the fear factor of vortex assault troops.
Seeing those same creatures defending human positions shattered their operational confidence.
But the real revelation came when the freed vortex engaged their former masters in combat. Elena had expected them to be effective fighters, but she hadn't anticipated the sheer fury they displayed when facing the species that had enslaved them. These weren't just military assets, they were individuals seeking justice for years of forced servitude.
The battle was swift and decisive.
The vortex natural hunting instincts, combined with their intimate knowledge of Zephyrian tactics and weaknesses, made them devastatingly effective opponents.
Within 2 hours, the entire Zephyrian assault force had been either eliminated or driven into retreat.
Phoenix Actual, this is Ground Team 7, Elena reported.
Enemy forces neutralized. No human casualties. Our vortex allies are requesting permission to pursue retreating forces. Colonel Martinez's response came through clearly, though Elena could hear the amazement in his voice. Captain, are you telling me that 6 alien creatures just repelled an entire Zephyrian assault force while protecting human personnel? That's exactly what I'm telling you, sir.
And, Colonel, they're asking about other vortex still under enemy control. They want to mount a rescue mission.
A long pause.
Then, Captain, patch me through to your alien allies.
I want to speak with them directly.
Elena looked at Kirith, who had been monitoring the conversation. The creature indicated understanding and moved closer to the translation computer. Kirith, Elena said formally, the leader of our fleet wants to communicate with you.
What followed was the first official diplomatic contact between humanity and a free vortex.
Through the translation computer, Kirith explained their species situation, thousands of individuals enslaved by control collars, forced to fight against their nature, desperate for freedom but unable to break their conditioning without help. We ask not for charity, Kirith said through the synthesized voice, but for partnership.
Your people understand freedom. Our people understand war. Together, we can defeat those who would enslave us both. Colonel Martinez was quiet for several minutes. Finally, Kirith, I'm going to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. If we help free your people, will they fight alongside humanity not just against the Zephyrians, but for the principles of freedom and self-determination? Kiritha's response was immediate and passionate. Colonel Martinez, our people have dreamed of choice for generations. To fight for freedom rather than slavery, to protect rather than destroy, to choose our own destiny rather than follow imposed commands. Yes, we will fight alongside humanity. Not as weapons, but as allies who share your values. Elena felt a surge of pride as she watched this unprecedented exchange. Two species that had been forced into conflict were finding common ground based on shared principles and mutual respect. In that case, Colonel Martinez said, I'm authorizing Operation Liberation. Captain Vasquez, you're now in command of the first joint human Vorthack military unit in history. Your mission is to identify and free as many enslaved Vorthacks as possible. The fleet will provide support and resources. Over the following weeks, Elena's unit grew from 6 Vorthacks to dozens, then hundreds. Each freed creature brought intelligence about Zephyrian operations, locations of other enslaved Vorthacks, and tactical knowledge that proved invaluable to the human fleet. But, more than just military assets, the freed Vorthacks brought something humanity had never expected: friendship. Elena watched in amazement as Dr. Harper worked alongside Vorthack healers to develop hybrid medical techniques. Lieutenant Park collaborated with Vorthack engineers to create new technologies that combined human innovation with alien biology. Sergeant Rodriguez, who had initially been skeptical of Kirith, became close friends with a freed Vorthack named Theron. The two warriors found common ground in their protective instincts and their dedication to defending the innocent. You know what's funny? Rodriguez said one evening as he and Elena watched human and Vorthack children playing together in the refugee camp they had established. 6 months ago, I thought these creatures were monsters. Now I can't imagine fighting alongside anyone else. Elena nodded, watching Kirith carefully teaching human youngsters about Vorthack hunting techniques while Vorthack juveniles learned human games. They were never monsters, Rodriguez. They were prisoners. All they needed was someone to break their chains. The turning point in the war came when they discovered a major Zephyrian breeding facility where hundreds of Vorthacks were being prepared for neural conditioning. The joint raid that followed became legendary, with human tactics and Vorthack capabilities combining to achieve what neither species could have accomplished alone. This is impossible, the captured Zephyrian commander said through his translator as he surveyed the ruins of his facility. The Vorthacks are programmed for absolute obedience. They cannot rebel. Elena stood beside Kirith, her hand resting comfortably on her alien friend's armored shoulder. You made one mistake in your programming. You gave them the capacity to feel gratitude. Once they experience kindness, they remember what freedom looks like. The liberated Vorthacks from the facility numbered in the hundreds, each one representing another victory for the principles of freedom and self-determination. As Elena watched them take their first steps as free beings, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Dr. Harper approached with her final reports. Captain, the psychological evaluations are remarkable. Every freed Vorthack shows the same pattern: initial confusion, rapid adaptation to autonomy, and, then, an overwhelming desire to help free others. It's as if their natural empathy was just suppressed, not eliminated. Elena smiled. That's because empathy isn't a weakness to be programmed away, Doctor. It's a strength that connects all intelligent life. 6 months after Elena first found a dying creature in a crater, she stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, watching as human and Vorthack ships worked together to patrol the liberated sectors. The war was far from over, but the balance had shifted dramatically. The Zephyrians no longer had their most feared weapons, and humanity had gained allies who understood both the value of freedom and the cost of losing it. Captain, came Kiritha's voice through the calm. The creature had accepted a position as liaison between the human fleet and the growing Vorthack resistance movement. We're receiving reports of another controlled group 3 sectors away. Are you ready for another rescue mission? Elena looked out at the stars, thinking about all the enslaved beings still waiting for freedom. Always ready, my friend. Let's go break some more chains. As the joint fleet jumped to hyperspace, Elena reflected on how a single act of compassion had changed the course of an entire war. They had saved one abandoned creature, and, in return, it had helped save an entire species. More than that, it had proven that understanding and empathy could triumph over fear and prejudice. The Vorthacks were no longer weapons of war. They were partners in peace, allies in freedom, and friends who had chosen to stand with humanity not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to. And, together, human and Vorthak alike were proving that no chains were strong enough to bind the spirit of those who refused to surrender their right to choose their own destiny. In the end, Elena realized, it hadn't been about saving an alien war beast at all. It had been about saving a person. And, once you recognize the personhood in another being, everything else follows naturally: respect, cooperation, friendship, and the unshakable bond that connects all who value freedom above force. The abandoned creature had become a symbol of hope for both species, proof that even in the darkest circumstances, compassion could light the way to a better future. And, as the Liberation Fleet jumped toward their next mission, Elena knew that this was just the beginning of a partnership that would reshape the galaxy itself.